Mandela was in prison. When he was released, everybody thought South Africa was going to go to war.
Africa and Africans have been through a colossal destruction.
That's what happened. Now here, this is PDP.
Let me throw some light on this.
No.
He said, okay, there's an issue in Somalia, and Museveni said, look, if you can't pay for the army, we'll go to Somalia. You can't.
Sudan never succeed to quill us into slavery. It never. Over Arabization.
Welcome to Africa Speaks. My name is Stephen Malindra, and I do hope that you guys are having a wonderful time, wherever you are. Now, what have I got in today's program? After 58 years of independence, what went wrong in Uganda? As you are well aware, on October the 9th, 1962, Uganda got her independence from Britain. Like most African countries, the celebrations were short-lived. That is, most African countries that have had problems. The president was deposed, and soon after, a military coup took place. 2 long internal civil wars took place, one of which brought the current president, Yoweri Museveni, to power. 58 years later, the country is still licking her wounds after the independence, that is, of course. The question is, what went wrong from the beginning, like other countries like Nigeria, Ghana, and so on, that have had military coups, and with the problems that they have had over the years? Can the Pearl of Africa overcome her many problems and be an example to the rest of the African continent? Your guess is as good as mine. Now, with me in the studio are 2 patriotic Ugandans, patriotic in a sense. I want you to listen to what they have to say, because they're very keen on making sure that their country is one of the best on the continent, and they are doing their level best to improve on whatever they are trying to do. Now, the first one is Mr. William Masembe-Nkata, a mental health practitioner and a community analyst based here in the UK. Welcome to the program.
Thank you, Steve.
Yeah.
Thank you, viewers.
Right. The second, I was supposed to have Michael Sibo, by the way, before I got ahead, but Michael has had some problems with the family, and of course couldn't be here in today's program. But I do hope that I'll be with him again next time when he happens to solve most of his problems back home. Now, my second guest is Mr. Joseph Othieno, Uganda People's Congress, former chairman here in London. Welcome to the program.
Very nice seeing you always, Stephen. Okay. Very good to be here today.
Okay. Now, as I said in my intro here, the history of our country is extremely important. By the way, I'm a Ugandan as well, so this means quite a lot to me. The history of Uganda and the history of all of Africa, to me, it's the beginning. The countries that are doing well in Africa probably had a better beginning. The Tanzanians, not Malawi, but Namibia and so on, probably had that better beginning of the way the establishment of those who led them at the beginning created the introduction to the way democracy should be. And those countries like Tanzania, Kenya, and the others, the few countries are still doing well. But the history shows that if things went wrong right from the beginning, like in Nigeria and so on and so on, you're looking at if the foundation wasn't laid down properly, then the problem started from the foundation. Now, 58 years later, we're having a problem because Uganda had the Kabaka of Uganda plus the first elected president, Milton Obote, and Ben Kiwanuka. The political structure in Uganda at the very beginning went wrong. So when it went wrong, it led to the creation of the Idi Amins and so on. No, I don't want to lecture on that, but I feel we should start from that level. Did things go wrong right at the beginning, or did they get it right and then maybe later on they started going wrong? I'll start with you, Joseph, because you're practically encyclopedic on these issues.
Thank you very much. In fact, to the extent that I would say that the examples you give with Tanzania and others are possibly Namibia is possibly misleading in the sense that Tanzania, for instance, you mentioned democracy, was not necessarily a believer in competitive multipartism, as it were. So in that sense, Uganda started much better. In fact, within East Africa, you would say that Kenya went one-party state earlier. Tanzania was almost by and large continuously one party. Uganda, we went competitive multi-party, but of course you're right that in the mid-60s things went wrong, but for a very different reason in Uganda, which I'll come back to. But then when you go to the rest of Africa, like the Namibias, these are the latter-day arrivals. Most Ugandans don't know is that actually the founding problems for Uganda post the 1966 crisis, meaning our own internal dynamics, was actually liberation struggle in Southern Africa, which Ugandans led, because Uganda led the campaign. Military Obote was officially the spokesperson for the campaigns for liberation of Southern Africa, which include Namibia, Zimbabwe, and South Africa. And for that reason, he got a big kicking from the British, which most Ugandans do not know. But fast forward, I think our foundation should really have been very good, because Lancaster House Agreement brought a semblance of consensus where Uganda People's Congress, then the leading political party, the Democratic Party, and the kingdoms, particularly led by Buganda, came to an agreement. So we had an independence agreement in which we all agreed and hoped that we wanted to build a new nation. But Uganda's dynamics was not the same as you would argue Kenya or Tanzania, because Buganda was a nation within a nation, continues to be a very powerful nation within a nation, and a very reluctant member of the Republic of Uganda. And that is something that is rarely discussed. In a way, to an extent, it caused the beginning of the problems that we had. Meaning the dynamics, managing the balancing of it. But Idi Amin was not an internal Uganda problem. Idi Amin was a creation of the British and Israelis. And of course, many other Ugandans celebrated simply because a government had been overthrown. But Amin's overthrow was because Obote wanted to arrest him on the killing of Brigadier Koya. Amin wanted to, Dr. Obote wanted to arrest him over the Congo gold scandals. And the Congo gold scandal was not that Obote was involved, but it's actually that Obote was actively supporting the Lumumbist forces in Congo, again, something that historians miss. So, but most importantly, the coup was because Obote was the official spokesperson for the Southern African Liberation Movement. So that's why he was overthrown from where? When he was...
Most Ugandans don't know that.
They actually don't know that, and yet that is actually the truth. So Amin was brought in when Israelis said that, well, when Obote sorts out Singapore and is returning to arrest you. And so if you don't want to get arrested, we can help you. But we can help you because we want you to serve a purpose to push him away from us.
Of course, William, any contribution to that? Do you think the beginning was... The beginning wasn't, because as far as the educational structure and the cultural structure of our... Could the beginning might have gone a different way if we had a better beginning in maybe political education, if, say, for example, the British had studied our backgrounds and said, okay, these people are like this and these are like this, especially the way the Baganda were in terms of their own independence. Because there were two things there. There's the Buganda independence and there is the Uganda independence, which the two were fighting here.
Thank you. I would like to congratulate my brother Ochen for the contribution he's made. It's very square and very informative for that purpose. I like the bit about the late Milton Obote as a pusher for African independence, South African part. I just want to take you a few years before that. The Kingdom of Buganda, in its struggle to claim back independence from the British, was way back in the 50s. One of the problems which King Edward Mutesa faced, this could possibly be undocumented. King Mutesa and the Kingdom of Buganda supported the Mau Mau.
In Kenya?
Yes. It's not. It might not be gazetted, but it is documented in some circles.
Yeah, but
that in a way, that Uganda in East Africa or in Africa stood on a different platform. Can I relate to that where Milton Obote comes in? So that dynamics and the understanding of Ugandans to be independent, I don't know how to describe it, to explain it, but it was within the DNA of Ugandans. I just wanted to take you back a little bit about, So the consequences of 1950, when Kabaka was 53, what is documented is about the dynamics between him and Governor Cohen. What is not said is about his Pan-Africanism, but also the demand for independence.
The demand for independence.
The demand for the independence of Buganda.
Buganda, not Uganda, but
Okay.
And why? Because when you look back and you ask yourself, when was Uganda formed?
Yeah.
And where was it formed? What were the dynamics of forming Uganda, which was going to be independent? So we are talking about a group of nationalities in Uganda. These nationalities had their form of leadership and governance. You can call it rudimentary, uncivilized, but every part in the language which people use, in order to give an impression that Africa didn't know nothing, or Africa never had a form of governance. So the point of Uganda being at a better position than East African countries, Uganda went into multi-party system at the time of independence. The other countries were single, monolithic political push for independence. It was either an advantage or a disadvantage. These are the kind of things and the conversation we need to bring back and determine why was it an advantage? Why bring political parties at the time of independence? Did the political parties participate in the earlier negotiations of the contract between the British government and the Ugandan nationalities?
They did, and they did a great job. The Democratic Party played its role, UPC played its role, not KY, but the Kingdom played its role because KY was formed. After that, to be fair to the Kabaka. But really, what is important is that our constitution was a consensus constitution. In fact, when again, I will bring back Milton Obote, when at independence in 1962, after the elections which UPC won, Obote actually opted for a government of national unity,
rather than a UPC government.
Rather than a UPC government. And the idea was that, well, we form a government of consensus because there are outstanding issues which you're trying to allude to, unresolved issues between Buganda and Bunyoro, which old Milton had to drive himself into.
The counties.
The status of Mbale, whether Mbale is part of Bukedi. The wider, broader identity questions involving other kingdoms, including federalism, granted. These guys agreed, those consensus. Independence came. It's DP, Ben Chiwanuka, who refused to join this government. And I don't know how much we can go back into that, because Ben Chiwanuka was not willing to sit on the same table with Sir Edward. And today, I'm not quite sure whether people generally understand
the history of that goes into where then we enter into religion, because Chiwanuka's a Catholic, the Kabaka was a Protestant, and that is where the separation goes. But my program, or today's program, I'm looking at solutions. I just the history of it. You guys are touching it, which is quite interesting. But the biggest problem we have at the moment, fast forward. This is the 21st century. There are so many problems. We've had a president for the last 34 years in office. constitutions have changed in Parliament. There are a lot of things that are going on at the moment. The youth movement is taking place now with Chagulanyi and all the others. It's a question of wondering whether these are part of the creation.
They are linked.
Yeah, which are linked. And how do we solve this problem? That's my biggest thing. I mean, we won't stop
this conversation, Steve, is important, and I'm really delighted that you did.
Yeah.
This conversation is extremely important because young Ugandans today really need to know how and where Museveni came. Young Ugandans today really need to know how the struggle for our independence was won. Young Ugandans today need to know genuinely the truth about 1962, 1963, when Sir Edward, with the support of Uganda People's Congress, made Sir Edward the president, titular president of the Republic of Uganda, under the constitutional arrangement, to abandon the British system where the Queen's Governor General would be chief of Uganda. And this was all understanding consensus. What happened in 1963? What happened in 1964 during the referendum, which Uganda was reluctant to have, and yet this was part of a constitutional arrangement. Those are the issues, because part of our problem is, while we look at the issues generally, we sometimes tend to pick and choose. And to do so in contextual history, and for today's generation, we will not succeed. Why? Because it will not be factual. Anybody who's... you can't do literature review and pick which is which.
No, exactly. You can't do that,
What happened in 1964? What was the position of Uganda over the lost countries? If the lost countries and the referendum was something that had been agreed, you can't agree something in the morning and the afternoon.
In the afternoon, you change it.
What were the events leading to 1966? I'm sure you couldn't wait for that. What happened in 1965? How many times before the 1966 crisis, which was a very unfortunate event, what really led to it? How many times had assassination attempts been made on Milton Obote? Who were the key players? What responsibility does Milton Obote take? What responsibility does Sir Edward take? What responsibility does UPC take? What responsibility does the Bataka guys who were advising Sir Edward take? Fast forward to that. What happens after 1966, after the death of the Kabaka? Because the nature of the conversation, because 1969 the Kabaka dies in UK. The theoretical debate is that Obote killed Sir Edward.
Which
common sense and evidence, and the journalists know it. Actually, that's not true.
No, there was it's alcohol issue.
Indeed, but why I'm saying that, just to conclude very quickly, all those are things that, unless they're contextually resolved, young Ugandans that you're talking about, peak from a point of view in which, is this Joseph? Is it Mulino? Can I experiment? Those led to Museveni, after losing elections in 1980, goes to Luweero and finds willing fodder to back him. Now, the rest of the Ugandans will simply say that this guy is not a Democrat. That's why I'm bringing this. This guy is not a Democrat. This guy's background, were elections rigged or not rigged and things like that. We had already started from a fuel foundation. What happens? Now the guys who are following Chagulanyi and all of a sudden just realize that, come to think of it, we're young guys who followed a crude guy. This is where we are. We're just about gambling. We will not get it right going forward unless we know where we're coming from. And
you know the past. William, okay, sorry, go ahead.
I like my brother's contribution. It is quite deep, in very important areas. I just want to add on that, or drift a little bit. One of the questions when we're talking about independence of African states, we should always try never to forget the Berlin Conference.
Okay.
Yeah, sure.
That divided Africa.
Yes. If you were looking for the genesis of the problems in Africa, the 1885 Berlin Conference, should not be taken out of the equation.
Okay.
Which spurred interest from Europe to go and acquire ownership,
resources.
Acquire ownership.
Okay.
You own, everything under is yours.
You divide us like
organize, manipulate, go and do business. Because it started up as business. Go and do business. This part belongs to Belgium, this part belongs to Britain, this part belongs to ABC France. That is the genesis of the African problem.
Okay.
Can I point one thing which is so important as part of the genesis of that? When ownership is taken away from you, what do you lose? you lose sense of duty, you lose sense of responsibility, you lose sense of ownership. How is it done? The education which is brought to you and the way to do business, the way of doing business which is brought to you is foreign. It is going to dismantle, disorganize your way of thinking, your way of doing things, even your way of relating with others.
Okay.
I want to come off that point by saying, as we discuss, we should not take away the Berlin Conference. We should be mindful about the socio-economic of the population which is losing ownership. We should be mindful of the socio-political influences of the new forces which have come to do business.
Okay, William.
Thank you. Thank you.
I think what you're giving is mainly for scholars who are deeply into that, because it's very interesting. Because obviously we need that history, and I like the history as well from both of you in the way you are presented it, which is very good. But I'm more concerned about the present. The present level, when we understand where we went wrong, the idea right now is to try and see if we can correct what went wrong, and then deal with the present, because the present situation at the moment is that somebody came into power, found a situation, created a personal situation right now, and that personal situation is what we have at the moment. The key question now everybody's asking, even here in the West, when I spoke to a number of people from here, a couple of MPs and so on, they said, okay, the key question you should always be, how do you get out of it? Because I was speaking to an MP a few days ago, and he was telling me, well, look at the situation and say, whatever question you have to ask, how do we get out of the situation we're in? Because in the West, they look at solutions rather than you can look at the problem. It is always, the problem is always going to be there if you don't find a solution to that problem. The history of it will be there, and you'll be, the slave trade went, and they are so sorry for what they did. They paid whatever they did. Oh yeah. Most of them are sorry. Most of them are sorry for what their great grandfathers did. But at the end of the day, they said, okay, now we've moved on. But what should we do to see that the damage we did doesn't really continue with the way the situation is? But then we ourselves, even Bob Marley said so. Let's get that mind out of us and move on. Emancipate yourself from anti-slavery. That's Bob Marley. And he was warning, let's move on. So I'm looking at that as far as Uganda is concerned. How do we move on from that situation and deal with the current situation at the moment in Uganda, in the sense that, okay, the parties are not uniting to defeat Museveni. They are not. There's internal fighting. There's a lot going on. That is what I'm looking at. We've looked at the history. How do anybody with an idea on how we can move on?
I was bringing you closer to here, starting with the beginning, and that's why I actually hinted at the 1980 general elections and how Mr. Museveni came in.
Yeah.
Sometimes many friends, including a Kenyan friend who was having a chat with me earlier, for many of them, Museveni was the BBC narrative savior, which he wasn't. This is a guy who had been rejected in the elections, and went to Luweero and opted for a means which he did not even bring Moi, because Moi took over from Kenyatta and entrenched a one-party system. Mr. Museveni came on a personal mission, used, played DP, and a few other interests, killed institutions, killed political parties which you're referring to, created an organization around himself. It took some of us to take him to court, including International Court of Public Opinion, to defeat him in his own court in November 2004. That led to the opening of the political space. But by then, after 20 years, what it means is that political parties had not only been weakened, and which would win, DP had already absorbed itself with the NRM. It's basically just trying to undo. UPC was supposedly the target of the time. And so we are still battling, trying to come out of that in a different way. What Museveni created is a monolithic system for which about him, me, myself, and I kind of stuff. And that's the body politic we have in Uganda. So some of the young, genuine Ugandans who are very committed to the country have no clue. That's why this history is important. Even my friends, like my young friends, like the Robert Chagulanyi, we still have to help them to contextualize many of these things and to deepen their thoughts to be able to take advantage of the realities of today. So the political parties in Uganda are as much victims as Ugandans themselves. How do we untangle them? I want to tell you that some of the legislators we talk to, and I have a few friends, in parliaments, including here, they know that they've not left Mr. Museveni until they reject Mr. Museveni the way they rejected Robert Mugabe for different reasons. It's a lie. It's a lie because Mr. Museveni is the top nyampala for Western interests in Africa. And then as long as that is the case, for us, we're just punching bags. But for us as citizens, recognizing that, what do we do? I think it's about organization. It's about
unity.
Unity, but unity of purpose. It's about becoming selfless. Problem is that if over 30 years, and 30 years is not a short time, you've created a situation of politics of me, myself, and I, and what is the need for me. And that is the narrative, and that's the formative way of survival. It gets very, very difficult. Meaning that even some of the 20-something-year-olds, for me, by the time I was entering Makerere, I was really, really very sharp about this genuine Ugandan nationhood and sense of thought of purpose. At the moment, the guys who are churned out of Makerere, and other universities, are preparing themselves for what next is it for me to compete with Steve over that house and over that car, without actually an idea how these things are actually attained. But taking you briefly back, not back into the one you don't want. Part of Uganda's structural history that we may not forget, because what we need for the future, is that by the time Idi Amin came, we had the best educational system, we had the best health services, we had the top civil service. In fact, civil service in Uganda was considered the best that Amin inherited, the best on tropical Africa. We were looking at 1972 to start so-called universal primary education. So those are structural systems that happened in Uganda for at least 8 years at the beginning of independence, which are possibilities going forward. But do Ugandans know that? How do we get to that? To get to that, we'll have to unclothe the NRM system. We'll have to unclothe Mr. Museveni. We'll have to unclothe Mr. Museveni's friends. We'll have to unclothe the systems and structures that brought in Mr. Museveni. And the more we do that, and we can only do that through this kind of conversation and debate, but we can also do that only on issues. Mythical concepts about the ideology, mythical concepts about democracy is an absolute nonsense because it's not true.
It's not.
And so how we managed to engage young guys without getting Pandagari, which Pandagari Mr. Museveni created, and people think is who created it. It started with Mr. Museveni over no lule, no work stuff, when Obote was still in Tanzania, elections hadn't taken place. So, and Museveni started it, to target young Baganda pro-Lule supporters. Do many of the young guys who are being rolled around these things know these things? They don't. If you don't know it, if you don't know your enemy, you cannot undo it. So people need to know many of this truth. So maybe I'm not giving you a very comfortable answer, but the fact is,
the problems we know. It's the solution that I'm trying to think in terms of. Okay, now we know what the problem is.
We need leadership. We need a new leadership. We need a new leadership to emerge, and leadership about individuals, but very minimally. Leadership is about ideas. Leadership is about structures. Leadership is about institutions. So we realize that if these are what leaderships are all about, you can see how we're going round and round and round. And that how hard it makes it difficult. Why? Because actually Museveni said he put Uganda in a bottle. So it's not going to be an easy thing to do. But it's actually possible still.
It is. The issue of money, the budget, most political parties in Uganda are broke. They don't have money. The entire United Factor. Mugisha Muntu has said that they need to raise a lot of money because the issue of money has affected their campaigns, have affected whatever they're trying to do. Now that's where we in the diaspora come in. Now, how can these political parties have a structure in place that can challenge what is going on.
I have a different view. I have a different view.
Because he says
because for us to play money means we're actually playing Museveni's games. We're not offering an alternative. My view is actually for us to dismantle the politics of money.
Because the right structure is not going to happen.
No, Mugisha Muntu needs to come out and play big. Mugisha Muntu needs to come out and say, how did I join this mess? Mugisha Muntu needs to say that I came out of this mess, this is the reasons. But now that the mess was this, the more we give people alternative ideas, alternative reasons, alternative causes to go into politics, and I've been part of the process where you can actually see people say, they give me your money, but I'm going to vote Steve. Something like that. So those are the possibilities. I think it's much more about organization than actually playing Mr. Museveni's game of money. Because actually at the moment, Museveni's bank is the National Treasury.
Of course.
How can you compete with that? You can't.
Yeah, because
so we've got to contextually think from there. We have to think a different way.
William, what do you think? You think the structure as it is there a way forward, or are we just remaining where we are? Because
I will highlight
if we are looking at all these problems, then there is always a tendency. Okay, can we go left? Can we go right? What do you think?
Being a community-based person, I never call myself a politician. I'm forced by others, but you are, but I'm not. I look at people and people's needs. That is my life.
Okay.
But as I do that, what I do, I land on information. I land on knowledge. I land on real needs in form of suffering, physically, structurally, psychologically. And those three things are important in nation building, in nation formation. I also, being a community person, I bump onto people's political views by default. And what I can say with certainty is that until Ugandans, Africans start to work so hard on the notion of ownership.
Ownership.
Yes. What does ownership mean? How much do they contribute to nation building?
Okay.
How much do they contribute in terms of ideas, in terms of policy formation, in terms of decisions that the president is going to Libya to acquire a loan for 50 years? What is the voice of the woman in Amdan, in Moroto, in Masaka?
Okay.
Where is their voice? The president wakes up one day, sends a contingency to somewhere to acquire a loan for 200 years without the participation of the owners of this nation state. So this, until we build and construct and organize, as my brother said, we need organization which would inspire our people to understand that they have a stake in that part of the world by birth, by ancestry, and other means.
Now,
and that is one of the equation, and I think people are doing that. Unfortunately, the way it seems to be done is by accident. It's not organized. But the people who don't want our people to own and to take part in a discussion about their lives and the fate of their nation are organized.
Right. I want to come up with something here which I've observed with Nigerians when I did a program here in regards to the way forward after 60 years of Nigerian independence. And I made a suggestion of the federal system. Maybe the Western system of government has failed in Nigeria. The senators are enriching themselves. The parliamentarians are becoming too rich, the governors are too rich, they're not looking at what's going on down. But the Igbo are saying, look, somebody came up with them and said, look, that's why we had the Biafra War. Now, if the Igbos can develop their own areas, because going into the central government somewhere along the way, there's always a structure which takes money in and money doesn't come out. Now, I can look at Uganda as well. We had 4 kingdoms. Buganda, for example. If you give Buganda money tomorrow, because of the unity under the Kabaka, maybe the chances are they had a lot of things like Burungi Bwansi, things which they do personally, which they wouldn't even want money, but they do it because of the love for their kingdom. But similarly, in Kitgum is in Acholi. There are certain people there who are doing things, even in Lira. They do certain things for the love of their communities and so on. Now, if these people, say for example, each region of Uganda, you say, I'm giving you £1 million, each region, for example, the districts, give them money. You are going to find, because local people will know who they go to, say, hey, why is our road not made? Why is our road not made? Then they can't come to the central government, because the local person will say, it's the central government hasn't given me the money. But if this structure goes down to the bottom, that's part of the solution I'm looking at. You are here in the UK, you are seeing the councils and boroughs, how they manage their areas. So if that settled structure comes in Africa, can that work? Ghana is, I think, even trying it. They're trying it in Ghana and at certain parts. It hasn't reached the bomb, but it has to begin somewhere.
Steve, that's not the point. This system...
But it's part of a solution.
No, you're right, but they exist. They exist in Uganda. I was actually going to challenge you over the local council system. The local council systems here are not necessarily about federalism. But I know federalism is a subject and a topic that I think Uganda needs to sort it out one way or another. I personally believe that the issue is not absence of federalism. Because even in the absence of federalism, because before Museveni came, Uganda functioned.
Of course it did.
Uganda functioned, Uganda can function. The problem, the break of Uganda today is a direct 34 years of a monolithic dictatorship, very self-centered, and one which is equivalent to a state capture. That is a fact. It's not a political fact. I mean, as I'm presenting, but it's both a political and real fact.
Do you know the reason? The reason why I'm giving the structure of federalism, I'm looking at it from the money point of view. Because if you look at Christian schools, I went to a Christian school back home in Uganda, and you've looked at most of the church schools, we're doing so well. Why? Because money would come in through the Anglican church, through the Catholic church.
But has that money stopped? What has happened? What happened to my Mwiris?
The money is still going there. It's not a lot, but it's still going there.
But do you realize the schools that are doing better now? The schools that are doing better now, private schools that belong to particular individuals, which money is coming from nowhere. No, Steve, as I said, as far as Uganda is concerned, we need to have, we need to recognize that we do not have a democracy and we do not have democracy for the last 34 years.
Everybody
we
knows
need
that,
to know that. But number two, we need to agree that if we want a competitive multi-party political system, we shall allow political parties to emerge with leadership, with ideal sets of values, and run with them. And we shall create an enabling environment in which Uganda is able to freely engage. But to take you back again, that some of the things that you're unfortunate, but some of the things that actually drive me is that I'm a born of the 60s, but at a particular stage in the 70s, I genuinely saw certain things. And the more I actually lived here, I started here as a branch secretary, branch chair, constituency, whatever. I can say possibly on TV here, being requested, to join a political party, to join the long list, to go ahead and become a member of parliament. Maybe the history would have been different. Looking at the British political system, what's happening here, is not necessarily different from what could necessarily happen in Uganda if we have the space. So the guys who want federalism, it can work. But under the current system, the issue is not that. The unitary system of government, when you have a government which is accountable, which is by and large this one here, when you have a central government which is accountable, which is democratic, you will have local governments and local authorities that actually provide. But when you have politicians who are held to account and citizens who are able to hold their leaders to account, you know, it works. When I tell my fellow Ugandans that my member of parliament, you know, who's the top, you know, mother of the parliament, I better say so, my friend Harriet, and she comes to a meeting and then she pauses in a particular corner. The chair of the local branch meeting is the one in charge of the meeting, and she will have to oblige. These are the things some of us, maybe the three of us, need to take back to Uganda and tell these guys that actually it's possible. So Obote said in 1984 to UPC parliamentary group that elections is actually going to take place because we were defeated. Museveni was run to elections are going to take place in 1985. But you guys, as you prepare your balanced sheet.
Yeah.
You know, people don't come running to me. Meaning, I hope you've not been wasting the last 4 years. You know? Now, I bring that deliberately for people who were born in 1984, that actually this thing is actually possible in the year 2034. That you elect people who come back with a balance sheet, and if they don't deliver and they don't provide, you know, you know, you'll not return them. Now, in as soon as and as long as these guys know that Steve is concerned about what Joseph is doing, Joseph will think again. I think those are the issues. But you're right about going forward. Federalism is a subject of discussion.
Of course.
Political systems is not negotiable as far as I'm concerned. I don't know anywhere in Africa where anybody would want to claim that there's an alternative to multi-party political system. Problem with Uganda, though, interesting as you say, it's the only country, just food for thought for you guys, the only country where to date we are actually having a conversation about the state, a very powerful kingdom, you know, and body politic in national system. We need to be able to resolve that, and this is a very honest, open conversation. Because nearest to Mangosuthu Buthelez's South Africa is not anywhere else in Africa. How did the others manage, and why are we struggling with this? Part of my problem is that I think there is a lack of honesty amongst ourselves, and everybody else wants to have everybody else's problem except myself. And on the other hand, of course, Kabaka Mutebi returned and his position was restored. And one of the things I would ask is what has happened for 34 years, you know, in building that kingdom side by side with the nation state, or was it just a deal which is neither here nor there? And are we giving people, again, false hope and false expectations? My hope is that some of these things are resolved so that going forward, we do not have another major conflict between the state and in this case, kingdoms in Uganda.
Can I expand on that? A decade ago, we were talking about the northern part of Uganda being at war with the state. Lots of lives were lost. Uganda, as a nation state, lost a lot of resources in human resources. We lost a lot of time. Other parts of Uganda lost a lot of business. From and to. That was the state against a certain section
of the country.
The sufferings are here with us to live with us. The psychological impact are going to take 50 years
to deal with,
even if not more. Me as a community person who is always focused on the needs of the people, regardless of where you come from, regardless of your political orientation, what is the am I in position to ask the person in opposite me, what do you need? What is your problem? How can I help? If we can translate and transfer that principle of needs assessment of a nation, needs assessment of its people, we can, yes, politics is strong and it's influential because it's influenced by different circles from outside, but still, I still believe there's a room to operationalize people's needs. The other point is, if the state of Uganda you mentioned about the apparent conflict between the nation state and a kingdom or kingdoms. It has happened.
And identities, yes.
Yeah. In southern part of Uganda, there was a kingdom which has been crushed. Yeah. I'm sorry to use the word. I'm just it's recorded. It's undocumented. Crushed. We're here because of 58 years of independence. Should we actually be Nkata and Ocheno answering questions from 58 years? Right. Should we be here talking about these things? Or should we be here talking about how can we promote the intercultural richness between Benzururu and the Acholi and the Buganda? Because that is another level of association, which is of people who are at peace. But 58 years, even the structures which were put there, left there at the time of independence, are nowhere to be seen. There is no name of Uganda to some of the structures.
Right.
So, I know it's a short time, but it is important.
I understand, William. I understand.
As we talk about 58 years in power, of independence, 30 plus years, 8 years of other leaders, 5 years here and there, where is the voice of the person in Kitugumu, in Masaka?
I'll answer that.
Yeah.
Can I say something?
No, before you go to that.
One last statement.
Yeah.
Can we stop another imminent internal conflict? It's happening. But it's simmering. It's happening, it's simmering. Can we prevent it so that after 58 years, the nation of Uganda can celebrate that it's got the Ochenos, it's got the Stevens, it's got the Nkatas. They took to school to make better decisions. It's our duty to hold these conversations, to inform, but also to ask difficult questions.
Yeah. These are the questions we're trying to ask.
Thank you.
Yeah. Before you go ahead, I needed to bring in something which I've always been asked. But I'm asking all the Africans.
Yes.
And this is the issue of the Chinese.
Yeah.
It has united Nigerians. It has united. And I was due to interview a Chinese. He might be here in December. He left China, went to Nigeria in River State, and invested heavily. He has his plantation there, rice plantation. And suddenly, the governor has intervened, and I think his visa is revoked, so he's being kicked out of Nigeria. Now, they're Chinese, the others in Ghana now. So one of them is even made a chief in Ghana. And we've been seeing that celebrations, and other Chinese are on their way to Africa to invest heavily in Africa. Now, Africans who are living in diaspora have begun a movement that is trying to get the Chinese out of Africa, because the Chinese are giving loans to the governments, especially now. In South Africa, they even have a police force from China, which is looking after the interest of Chinese in South Africa, which is very shocking. And they are in Malawi, they're everywhere. And in Uganda, they've come. Now, African diaspora started this movement, and they are doing their best to say, my question is, that unity now to get the Chinese out of Africa, why can't that unity work in developing Africa? If the foreigners are coming in and you're getting worried about, our resources and everything, this is the high time we also should say, hang on a minute, I have a stake in Uganda. Why should a Chinese man go to Uganda and become successful when I have a stake in that country? I don't want him there. Because you can't go to China and do a business in China. You can't. But they've found a weak spot. So it's a kind of new colonialism in a way. Now, I need a comment on that. What is there something we can do now
do a devil's advocate show and I'll sit on the one side versus my other diasporan colleagues. I'm particularly considering that this is a political question.
Issue,
No, because on a serious note, I think, Steve, you make a very, very important point. The problems in Africa, as far as I'm concerned, is political and it's leadership. Now, Africans in the diaspora cannot stay put, look aside, and many sometimes actually do, that they don't care because they've sorted out some of their issues,
of course,
and then Uganda is just a by the way, another story, including, suddenly they will wait for some Obwana Jesus to sort it out, kind of stuff, no, so that is the problem. Now, for me, as you know, I've written about this, and my former colleague in New African, actually, I think I did a rather courageous one. I could not praise myself over 10 years ago on this question of Chinese involvement on the African continent. I feel very strongly about it. That it is something that should happen. But the Chinese started coming in when
they've been coming in for a long time.
When generally, because they came in with little conditionalities, and African governments enjoyed, including some of the ones who now build elephant infrastructures on the continent with big monies. They know it will not matter. I build elephant infrastructure, get my 30%, and then get praised, and Mulinda's great grandchildren to be able to sort it out.
No, exactly.
I think it has to be sorted politically, and the diaspora Africans should, in my opinion, possibly leave Chinese alone and focus on African governments, and so that we change those governments. But the quick point I wanted to make earlier was actually that in Uganda's cases, when you have an elected, freely democratically elected government, the people have a voice. And to be fair, when you've had a democratically elected government with a prime minister or a president who's gone to state house with the direct mandate of the people, and we had it twice at independence, people had a voice. What? Through a comparative multi-party system, a program, a manifesto has been debated, somebody has gone down there. Unfortunately, the vast majority of the last 58 years, it has not been the case. And when it's not been the case, you are quite right, the people will not have had a voice. How do they have a voice? We need to create that space, and it has to be political.
Okay, William. What do you think about the Chinese? My focus is what we should do with the Chinese at the moment. That's the key question.
About 3 years ago, I happened to have been in an international conference, and one Chinese followed me up, and he asked me, I heard that you come from Uganda, you've lived in the UK for some years. The reason why I want to talk to you is because I found it interesting that you still have interest in Uganda. And I asked, and we had a long conversation, and along the lines of some of the conversation, the lines of conversation, he told me one thing. He said, African, you need to change your mindset.
Okay.
Until you come to a point that you feel from your toes to your head that you belong, you own, and then you can protect.
When you don't have that, then it's
when you don't have a sense of, it goes back to the sense of ownership. This is what the Chinese actually, he was responding to my question, how did you do it? How did you, the Chinese, get to this point? Because I'm sure there has been forces of antagonism to your political space for some years, which might be similar to ours, but how did you do it? That's when he came up with that line, that until people start to feel that they own, they belong, then they can protect.
Okay. Now, before we go further, I just need to acknowledge a number of people who are actually watching the program and made a few comments. Stephen Tafo, he's simply say thank you. And then there is Ronnie Wakanda, who is saying Muntu Besigye and others who are on opposition, apart from Robert Chagulanyi, Bobby Wine, of course. The others are fake. They are working from Museveni. Then Bonnie just Piton, who says, let's make Mr. Joseph Otieno the national chairman of the UPC. Everybody, everywhere. Well, that's his opinion. Then Lawrence Muyimba, the solution sits with revisiting of the 15 stakeholders status in the formation of Uganda. That's Lawrence Muyimba. He again goes on to say, this is Mr. Nkata's point, Mr. Nkata, this is the point Mr. Nkata is trying to highlight it. I still got a couple of them coming up, but the point, as you're saying, of the Chinese is a very interesting one. But the thing is there are so many things are mixed up in these points. And one of the key points is that we come from very poor countries. Most of Africa, you're looking at the background, which are people here who have a bigger middle class, are easily, you can't easily convince them because of where they come from and how they stand. Now, the biggest problem that has come because of the Chaguanyis and the youth, which the present governments, this is happening in Nigeria now, by the way, stop SARS and so on and so on. It's because the young people have no jobs. There's the huge unemployment in Africa, which is, in fact, it's to certain areas, it's about 90 to 80%. Now, because they have degrees, they're highly educated, they're not doing anything. The governments haven't put something in place for them, where to go. The only way out is to try and demonstrate. They have nothing to lose. So it's similarly the same thing in Uganda. Yeah. That's why we're having that sort of situation. Those who have a lot to gain are still standing with the politicians and so on. How do we balance that? How do we break that code? Yeah? Because it has to start from the ground.
Just very briefly, I think I was busy.
Can there ever be an African Spring at all?
Oh, it's possible.
Yeah.
It is possible. I was being rather harsh to my diasporan colleagues, but possibly deliberately. The other colleagues that I challenged, and I was in town the other day in Kampala, and I'll be soon there, to have conversations with our so-called elites.
Yeah.
You know, some of our elites are content when you have your second-hand car from Japan, you can afford a decent phone, and you can afford to go to the other joints, you know, meaning a roast joint, you know, to be whatever, and you're able to successfully rent, you know, from a landlord whom you don't know, and that sort of is a content, and everything else is everybody's business. No, I think, as my brother says, we need to take responsibility and begin to demand to say no. And then there are some Ugandans, including some of whom may be watching me, who think it's up to the Ochenos to be paid. You know, almost as if we get paid to take a position on national issues and national questions. No, my brothers and sisters, it's a national issue. And if you don't do it today, our great-grandchildren are going to be slaves.
They'll be the one paying for it.
Unofficial slaves of the Chinese. And for me, as Joseph Otieno, I say no, and it will not happen.
You think so?
Very, very good, very important point. Very important point. The responsibility has to come back to us. Some people might be listening to what we're saying, and the interpretations are going to be different. And everybody is entitled to the interpretation.
Of course.
But what is important are the topical issues we're talking about. You are in power today. You have followers. This could be your children. You are not in power tomorrow. Be mindful of what you do today, that you don't want anything to happen to those following you.
Okay, I want to thank the people who are contributing to this debate. Of course, the numbers are going up. Emma Ocho, who thinks, I think we need to love and protect Africa. That is great. Lawrence Mimba, and obviously Bonnie, Ronnie Wakada, and all the others. Thank you for your contribution. Obviously, we are taking that into account. The issue of women into politics, could this affect be a game changer? Because when I looked at Uganda's parliament at the moment, there are going to be 155 women in parliament. The previous government, the previous sitting government had less than 100, but their numbers have gone up. Could their presence in parliament be a game changer? Because even political parties have got women in various areas. Because they have been a game changer in Liberia. They're a game changer in Rwanda, and now they're trying to be a game changer in South Africa. The ANC has quite a huge, you know. So maybe if we have more women into our parliament's structure in Uganda, because there are numbers, out of the 540 something, you're going to have about 200 women. That could be a big game changer. Because they tend to view things in a different way.
Yes and no.
Yeah.
I led a policy review for UPC, which assured that we have, at every executive level, we have 62% youth and women. And I was proud to note that UPC was the first independent political party to have a woman as leader, although under a difficult time, Mama Miria Obote in 2005.
Okay.
But that said, I'm extremely concerned that what I saw, and it's a welcome move in Uganda, has been almost like a tokenistic stuff, including the affirmative action seats. I'm actually not quite sure, and this would be very unfair to, and I'm in trouble because many of these guys are my friends. I'm not quite sure how many people as individual women have, as a result of the positions they hold. I was speaking to a very senior woman, I want to refer to actually, I think about 4 days ago, about a very particular issue, very senior person in Ugandan body politic. And the issue was, how does the presence of a woman in a particular position today in Uganda affect directly or impact directly on the livelihood of youth and young people, women and children in Uganda? I don't think it's that yet in March. My concern is that it's much more about number and quality and presentation, much more about presentation rather than real substance. I would like to see more women in key leadership positions, including leading political parties, and I hope that I will contribute to ensuring that we have a first Ugandan woman president, democratically elected, by the way. But that being said, it's not about who is the president, who is the leader. It is really very much about investment, which UPC did. And Milton Boy was telling me this in 2002, short before his death, which I was like, that Joe, we said poverty, ignorance, disease, meaning the three things, meaning what? What women want is to ensure that there is a guarantee that we have sufficient education for themselves and their children. That poverty means that clean water, health, and guarantee that they don't die. Give them, this kind of funny stuff. So really, the more qualitatively we contribute to the social economic development that my brother is sort of referring to me, the better. Now, are we able to have women at top positions in Uganda who take a position which is not partisan, but which is really driven by values? I'm yet to see that, because I don't want to name a few people who are very high-profile women from Uganda, including globally, but they're very much driven by self-interest, including what is very much about themselves.
I do agree.
And there's a kind of corners.
The reason why I mentioned that is because on the recent comments that have been made about police brutality in Uganda, even women, even women women in
the force,
women in NRM, the president's party. It's only women who have commented on that, by the way. And I've seen this even in Nigeria. The women senators in Nigeria in fact, it's because of them that the president had to disbandle the SARS.
Generally, they're by and large the peacemakers,
You get the point. In Sudan at the moment, the peace talks wouldn't have been gone the way they are, because if the women hadn't intervened to a certain extent, where you see that they're present, they tend to have that kind of fairness in a way, even though they support a particular party. There's that thing that I would rather, they feel uncomfortable seeing certain things. You see the point? That's why I was thinking that it goes back to the point that William was giving.
The problem in Uganda is this, not about the women. The problem, which is what I wanted to conclude, was that it's about patronage. The guy in charge is the guy in State House, and what State House says is what goes. So by and large, it is very much more about the tokenistic kind of stuff. But we hope that time will come beyond the realities of today, when Museveni is too tired to walk between Nakasero and Kampala City, that many of these women will translate into the real stuff that we can do.
The issue of women is very important. Thank you for that contribution and observation. The issue of women is important, but what I would contribute to it is that there is a need to enrich our politics. There's a need to widen scope. of the border politic of Uganda or Africa per se.
Yeah.
And not necessarily to do gimmick actions, yeah, not necessarily to cut and copy, cut and paste,
Yes,
yeah, because it's done like this in somewhere else in Europe. I think there is a need. The reason why I'm suggesting to widen up, to enrich our politics. Our politics has no psychological component. I can argue.
Yeah, William.
Yeah, our politics.
Bedtime.
Yeah, it's taking us into the psychological.
Can I, it's very important.
Yeah, I agree.
The reason why I'm saying that is that that's why the first 5 questions I noted. You are positioning money. To throw money on projects, to throw money on initiatives of change, to throw money to. Please, where is that moment of time where me and you can sit together to a psychological level, quality? I'm talking about widening and enriching our politics. The cultural concept, the cultural definitive or definition or understanding and how we can amalgamate our cultures into our politics.
William, I have to interrupt you. We are coming towards the end of the program. And
so enrichment.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah. Any last words? Because I think we'll probably be here until the word, but we're coming towards the end of the program. Any last words of the future?
I'm just conscious. I'm just conscious that we've had a very troubled past. Sometimes people say, but a very troubled present.
Okay.
But I just want to tell Ugandans that actually Uganda had a very good foundation, and that the foundation that Uganda had means that if all Ugandans looked back to that and looked back, as I said at the beginning, what went wrong, it is very possible for us to be honest and own up, all of us Ugandans, to own up. And in that way, there's
something that I've just remembered, but the problem is the time has caught up with us. And it was to do with what President Yoweri had written long time ago, where he, Obote, you were close to President Obote.
Yes.
And he had actually told Obote that if you go back and you don't resolve what you did in the 60s, and you're going in again as president for the second time, and the issue that was never resolved in the 60s, and you bring it back, and you don't resolve a similar issue, you're probably going to face difficulties. You told him that now?
Yeah, I'm not quite sure about the context of that, because the 60s issues were no longer relevant. In the 80s.
Things that moved on.
In the 80s, things that moved on. But very important point is Milton Obote, who told Nyerere of a meal, and this is official, that we should all retire when we're still popular. Unfortunately, Nyerere had an opportunity Obote did not have. But maybe that's a lesson for African leaders today.
All right. William, want to say something?
Yeah, Uganda. We are one people. Uganda, we are not tribalistic.
Okay.
Ugandans have always worked together, and Ugandans can do a lot together.
Okay.
To protect those who are in leadership. We need to be the savers of those who are in leadership.
William, I've got to cut you short there. I just want to thank you both for coming to today's program, and of course your views are noted, and I do hope that maybe the next we won't have another independent next year. Things will probably be different. I just want to say thank you very much for viewing us.
Thank you.
And I do hope that we'll be together next week for another edition of Africa Speaks. Thank you very much, and may God bless you.
Mandela was in prison. When he was released, everybody thought South Africa was going to go to war.
Africa and Africans have been through a colossal destruction.
That's what happened. Now here, this is PDP.
Let me throw some light on this.
He said, okay, there's an issue in Somalia. And Museveni said, look, if you can't pay for the army, we'll go to Somalia. You can't.
Sudan never succeed to quill us into slavery. It never. Over Arabization.